Welcome back to Grounding in Nature. Today I am going to do a little indoor activity. So I always have a lot of pine cones on hand at all times because when I'm walking and I see pine cones at pine cone season, which is usually in around September, I am stuffing them into my bag anywhere I go. And I have friends who do the same thing and they bring them to me. So I have a lot of pine cones. So I'm gonna have my assistant bring me that bowl of pine cones that's just outside my reach. She's very cute, but I'm not gonna show her. And I have a real array of pine cones here. While we're starting, it's a very good idea to use all of our senses that we have accessible to us to explore the pine cones. So we're gonna make flowers out of them, which is awesome and wild and wacky. But before we cut them up and paint them and turn them into something else, what if we explore them as who they are just right now? I have a beautiful pine cone with very long limbs. It's bendy. It smells like the earth. I have a little pine cone. It has not opened up. Now, I'm saying pine cone, but they may not be from a pine. They could be from a cedar or a spruce or a fir. I don't know. You don't have to know all those things. I probably knew when I picked it up and now I don't know. So this one's still closed. The seeds are inside. So in here, you can see the seeds sometimes. They may have all popped out. Yeah, it looks like they've all popped out, but they can't pop out when it's still closed like this. Usually when you bring them indoors, this has been outside, but usually when you bring them indoors after a day or two, they'll open up because it's warm and the seeds will pop out. And a fun trick is if you put them in cold water, they'll close back up. I have some teeny tiny guys. These are most likely from a cedar or something. And then I have a big fat one. So this is probably the same one, same kind, but he's opened up. And we can look inside and see the seeds, and I can see the seeds. So we are going to use these pine cones, snip them down and make them look like flowers. So the first thing I need is some snippers. I've got two pairs of small snippers, and I do have big, huge snippers here, and I find those are easier for cutting some of the thicker, heavier pine cones. But so we're going to just go ahead and snip some of these. But usually what I do is take my pine cone. I might snip the bottom a little bit, and I can get quite a few pieces out of this. These snippers are not very good, so I'm gonna try some other ones. This one's way better. And so once I've snipped this, just the end, it looks like a flower, right? We're gonna paint that so that it looks even more like a flower. And then if I look at the end where I've snipped it off, that actually looks like a flower too. I don't know if you can, yeah, looks like a flower too. So we can paint those. So I'm just gonna keep snipping the ends until I have a lot of flowers. So we're gonna use our snippers for the smaller ones. I'm gonna get out these big, look at this. Oh my gosh. What? And then I'm pulling these out for this guy. So I take this big guy, I find a spot where he's gonna fit in, and I take this and I watch my fingers and I pull down. Woo! Look at this. Beautiful. But do you know what else? If you turn it over, it looks like a succulent. So we can choose different ways of representing different plants. Okay, so we're going to keep going here with this. I'm going to speed it up so that we're cutting all of them, and you're going to see what we do with them afterwards. I snipped a lot of cones. They're all different kinds. I realize now when I look here that there actually aren't that many Austrian pine. And Austrian pine is my favorite to work with. It's probably this one, and when it opens up, it really does look so much like a flower. So that's just something. I just was at the park and I saw a big Austrian pine. You can go online and look at a picture to see what they look like. They're pretty easy to identify because they're so big. Their needles are really long, and so when you see an Austrian pine, there should be some pine cones underneath still in the fall. If you go to the park, or if you even go to a cemetery, often they're labeled, or if you have an arboretum. I live in Guelph, and so we have an arboretum, and that's a great way to get to know what some plants look like, and trees. So I have a flower, one lonely flower left in my garden, and sometimes I have lots and lots of flowers, and I will pick a whole bunch of flowers, and I'll take a look at all my cones, and I'll see, okay, the shape of this cone and the shape of this flower are very similar. So what if I start by trying to mimic or copy the colors that exist in the flower onto the pine cone so that it looks like a real flower? So I'm going to grab my paintbrushes. I'm going to take a peek at the colors, and when I look really, this is another chance to focus our sense of sight onto the flower and notice what we might not notice if we just walk by. So I can see that there's lighter color in the inside of the flower, and as the petals get longer, it's a darker orange color. So why don't I start, the center is a different color for sure, but why don't I start by putting that lighter color right beside the center. So I'm just gonna put a light coat of yellow, light yellow in the inside, and then I'm going to take, I still have some yellow on here, and I'm going to just mix it in with the orange I've got. And then probably there's going to be some blendy action when I do that, and there is. So I can see there's just a little transition from the light yellow to the darker orange. And I can play around with that blending if I want. And I'm not an artist or a painter, but I'm just using my sense of sight and my sense of curiosity, which lately I've been thinking about as another sense. I have a sense of curiosity that helps guide me through my experience in the world, just like my sense of sight and smell and taste and touch and hearing. So I have some water here. I might do a little bit more blending, and I can do a second coat. Another thing you could do is start with gesso. So you could put a base coat of gesso, which is just like a primer, onto all of your cones and then let them dry, and then that's just an extra step, but you can just have some pre-gessoed cones that are white, and then you don't have to put as many coats on them. This is just regular acrylic paint. So here I've got my first coat on my first flower. I also have, when I look at these two together, I do have a center that's darker. What color is it? It is kind of like a dark red, like a burgundy red. Oh my gosh, my crew here concurs. They agree with me. So what if I do that? What if I just add just like a dark burgundy red? I never would have noticed that if I wasn't looking on purpose to try to mimic the color. So you really do, when you start painting and doing art and trying to mimic nature, you really start to notice in a different way than maybe you would have before. I love it. So this is my first coat. but I'm going to add different coats. I'm going to pull my team up on here, and we're going to fast track through our painting process so you don't have to watch it, and then we'll come up with the final product. Okay, so I have a lot of different flowers. We've tried to keep with a fall theme, different fall colors, greens and yellows and oranges and burgundies. We're gonna let these dry, and then when we come back, I'll show you how to mount them to something so that it looks like flowers, maybe a bouquet or flowers mounted onto something you can hang on the wall or display. There's lots of ways of bringing nature inside without it actually having to be caring for plants, because that can be difficult for some people, and we can still have those colors and that reminder of nature. I also wanted to mention that when we're working with these cones, often they have a lovely smell, and some smell more strongly than others, but there's another really great opportunity to just shut off all your other senses if you have that sense of smell available to you, and really just take a deep breath in and let that smell just mix into our brains, and that will help us feel calm. That scent actually does send a message to the brains of humans that we're safe, and then we feel calm, and it helps us concentrate, and it helps us feel well. So don't forget to take that time. Again, while we're focusing on our senses, we're not worrying about the past and the future, and we're in our present bodies. So when we come back, I'll show you how to mount everything after they've dried. Thanks. I have let all my flowers dry, and I found a frame, just an old frame that I had kicking around that didn't have anything in it. And I took the glass off the front, and then I just found some items in nature that are dry. So I found some hydrangea. I found some, they're dried up Japanese maple leaves that are quite dry and shriveled. And then I found these berries from a euonymus. And I have a cool piece of bark here. And so these have just been placed in here, but you can use a glue gun and affix them more stable. And I have now a chance to place all of these beautiful flowers right in here. They're standing up straight because the hydrangea and the leaves are holding them in place, and that makes a really nice little fall color on our wall. So you can do it a bunch of different ways. You can use preserved moss, or put it on a piece of wood. So I have a piece of wood here. It's just a regular piece of wood. You could glue them on there and set it somewhere. There's lots of creative ideas, and I'm sure everyone out there is super creative. Okay, thanks.